2 minutes, we'll start. Again, thank you everybody for coming and enjoy our sign and our
There's a lot of early bird
history. If you guys can mute your line, so that way we can hear everybody.
But again, in true Faces fashion, we want to be able to see your faces as well. So feel free to go ahead and show us your videos. So turn those screens around. We want to make sure you're paying attention, or if you have questions afterwards, we want to be able to put the name to the face. And so this is going to be unique like no other. Some of the interviews that we've had in the past, this is going to be very lighthearted, and also in the same breath of Philippine Heritage Month, we want to be able to showcase how Filipino Americans, or what we have to offer here at AT&T. So without further ado, Jan Jarkey is going to go ahead and kick off this meeting.
Is being recorded.
Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be our 4th quarter National Cultural Series for Faces. We had 2 previous to this. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're proud to present today because we're commemorating Filipino American History Month. So if you haven't had a chance, please check out our social media pages. Our very own Jacqueline Jewell, who's our PRO, has been posting fun facts for Filipino American history. Yay, Jackie! Thanks, Jackie. Okay, so today is a little introduction. You guys are in for a very special treat. Faces' very own Filipina AVPs, Alyssa Moore and Ellen Valencia, are going to speak today about their stories. Not only as leaders for their own business units, but ambassadors for Faces, which is an employee group here at AT&T. Faces is so very lucky to be represented by these 2 wonderful, dedicated, and genuine Filipina women. But more excitingly, I get to introduce Scott Smith. I had the honor of meeting Scott this year at the 11th annual ERG conference this year, and I'm so very impressed with him and all that he's done here at AT&T. So some fun facts. He graduated from Baylor University with a bachelor and master's, actually a bachelor in business administration and finance and a master's in business administration. He's been with AT&T for 29 years. He was appointed as Chief Human Resources Officer in August of 2017. We are very lucky. He was appointed, or he accepted to be our executive sponsor this year in 2019. So we have a lot to look forward to, and I can't wait to work with him. His team and him support over 200,000 AT&T employees in examples with labor relations, talent acquisitions, training, compensation, business partners, and operations. So we are so very lucky here at Faces to be able to meet and be sponsored by Scott Smith. Yay, Scott! Yay! Now I'd like to introduce Judy Villacruz-Grant, who will be introducing Alyssa Moore.
And if my counterpart didn't introduce herself, her name is Jan Jarkey. We're synonymous, interchangeable, you name it, one and the same. But we actually have the pleasure of introducing our SoCal President, Alyssa Moore, who is also the Associate Vice President for In-Home Solutions. She's been in this position since 2017, where she leads a team of sales professionals and delivers the white glove experience to over 10 states within the West region. In addition to that, Alyssa has been recognized, her and her team have been recognized 2 years in a row in the Goldie Award during the Mobility and Entertainment National Kickoff. And on top of that, in addition to all her accolades that she does in her professional career, I think a lot of us who are actually on this call today could call her our friend, our mentor, and also someone that we could try to emulate. She's very personable on that respect. A lot of folks that are actually in this position, you would never really think has the time to be part of an employee resource group, let alone lead one. But she, as our president, has has helped tremendously in increasing our volumes for membership, as well as just the engagement of volunteer hours itself. So a lot of the success that we have in Southern California are actually
Why would you want to vote?
to Alyssa Moore. And if it's okay, if I could please ask everybody else to mute your phones. I would hate to mute everybody altogether. I know we want to try to make this as interactive as possible, but at the same rate, we do hear a lot of background noise. And as a courtesy to these boss ladies and boss man, we want to make sure that all the attention is on them and not so much you. That's all right. So, all right, I digress. Without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and introduce our diversity and champion, Alyssa Moore. So, Alyssa, if you could just kind of wave, do a little passive wave.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you. And so from here, what I'll go ahead and do is introduce Lila Jane Pablo Chung, and she's going to go ahead and introduce Ellen Valencia.
Hey guys, before you get started, is it possible if you can mute maybe Vanna or something? Because it's really hard to hear you guys over the conversation that's going on.
Who is it? Scroll down, you can see who's talking.
I think it's Vanna Tly.
Okay, yeah, that one, right click. No, that one. Oops.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Thank you very much. We're trying to find her and talk at the same time, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries, thanks.
All right, thanks, Judy. Hi, I'm Lila Pablo Chung. You said the whole name, but I'm the FACES National Secretary, and I have the pleasure of introducing our next guest, Ellen Valencia, who is the FACES DFW Advisor and AVP of Logistics with Consumer Supply Chain and Global Logistics, supporting wireline, video, broadband, and AT&T Business Solutions operations. That's a mouthful. Ellen leads an organization of 850 plus employees that provide AT&T technology materials and tools required to provision and maintain our network and services nationally, as well as supporting business solutions, centralized staging, and order fulfillment globally. Let's see, Ellen has been with the company for over 13 years, where she's held diverse roles in finance, field operations, and supply chain. Ellen is a graduate of AT&T's flagship leadership development program, where she established her leadership career path and has been twice awarded with the Service Excellence Award. Ellen also has a passion for community service and was recognized as AT&T's Champion Diversity in 2015. Thanks, Ellen. So if you want to wave to everybody.
Oh, hi, wave. Hi, everyone.
Have a wave. And then I'm going to turn it over to Scott and to kick us off here.
All right, very good, thank you. I don't know how many people we have out there. I can see 2 people.
139
Oh, 100, oh, there's numbers.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
I've never seen that before.
Now 141, just keep talking, a couple more people came on. So, thank you for the introduction, thanks for having me here. I think I get to be the moderator here. I get to ask Ellen and Alyssa some questions here, so this is easy for me. You guys have all the hard work today. So I want to start with you. Same question to both of you. What prompted you to join an employee group, and specifically the FACES employee group?
I think the simple answer is community. When you started as an employee, you're kind of finding your place. And so certainly there's community within your business unit, and literally sometimes the people that you just sit on the floor with. But trying to find and branch out with the rest of the company, finding community outside of my BU, the EGs proved to be a really great place to do that. I think secondly, it's a very supportive place. It's a very safe place. I always tell people, train in the EG space. You'll find the most forgiving and supportive people in that space to train when in skill growth. A big shout out though to the Northern California chapter. That's where I'm from, and that's where I started. The most welcoming and nicest people. They made it really easy. I'm an introvert. I'm not the first one to raise my hand and come in, but they made it so easy for me to join and volunteer without a whole lot of effort on my side. So I always loved about the EGs and particularly FACES. And then secondly, I'll share that I just moved to Dallas a year ago. And literally without FACES, I don't think I would have settled as nicely. I almost think FACES, you guys should thank my boss that I was willing to move. Because part of it was knowing knowing that I had a network in Dallas even before I got here. So it was a big one for me. So really, I think community support and finding an easy, safe place to find home in the company.
Okay, good. Now, Alyssa, you get to give them. You have to figure out how to top that.
I know. Can I just say ditto? No, my reasoning is a little different. And so at the time, I was approached by Kelly King, who was VP at the time. You know, he said, I noticed that you really like to be around people, and I encourage you to join an ERG at the time, right? Because that's what we called it back then. And so I joined one, and I did get involved because of the community and just found that there was a broader reach of people that I could get to know, because at that time I was in retail, and, you know, at times you kind of get siloed into your space. And so I knew a lot of people in retail, but no one else really outside of that organization. And this allowed me to get to know more people where I probably wouldn't get to know them otherwise. And so on top of that, it gave me connections to people where we would end up partnering later on down the line. I became a member of FACES and then kind of grew from there. We all affectionately call her as Ate Doris, if you know her from the Southern California chapter. Ate, for those of you that aren't familiar, it means big sister. She actually, funny story, approached me in the bathroom and said, hey, I know you're Filipina. I need you to join FACES because you could really help us. You'll have fun. You could learn more about our culture. And I'm like, well, hey, why not? I'm in the bathroom. We're connecting. I'll become a member of FACES. And once I joined and talked to some of the board members, such as Judy and Jan and Lito at the time, it just really allowed me and motivated me to want to do more and have a broader reach across not only my organization, but everywhere else that I could impact for people to really understand the Filipino culture. And, you know, as I thought I was helping more people, I actually learned that I was learning more about myself and just kind of learning more about my culture when I thought I knew a lot already. And so that's why I joined FACES.
Very good. All right, so Alyssa, sticking with you there. By the way, you know, when you're in a bathroom and someone asks you to do something, you pretty much have to say yes.
Yeah, you're kind of cornered, right? Yeah.
You can't run away real quick, so it's like, okay, I'll do it. So our employee, regardless of employee groups, FACES or any others, you know, all about diversity and inclusion. So how have you been as part of the employee group leadership here, or really just a member, it doesn't really matter either way, how have you been able to impact diversity and inclusion either within the group or even outside of the group? So talk to us a little bit about that, and then you get the same question. So I'll just
Yeah, I would just say really embodying what being a part of EG is. And it is a culture, and it's making everyone inclusive, right? And it's interesting because you would think being an employee of AT&T, like who wouldn't know about EG, employee groups? But there are a lot of employees out there that are unaware. They do great at their job, and they do things for their community outside of EGs. But it's been a great opportunity, especially in the organization I'm in with sales. There's always new people coming on board. And so just talking about it and inviting people to different events. So when I was a member, just inviting one person, two people, you know, new people to come with me would be a great way to engage employees. And now in the organization that I'm in across the West region, I am focused on Southern California, but I'm able to talk about it with my employees across the West region and encourage them to join an EG and FACES and kind of see what else is out there. And what I have found is that it gives them a broader perspective of how amazing the company that we work for is, because, you know, we encourage the community engagement, giving back, being a part of whatever it is that you want to be a part of. There is something there of interest for you. And so I've noticed with new people that we've brought to different events, they say things like, wow, the company I was with never had anything like this. this is amazing. It's fun, or it feels good to give back, and it feels good to be a part of something bigger than my day-to-day job. And so it's nice to be able to impact people in that way where they feel good about the work they're doing during the day, on their free time connected to AT&T, and it makes them think about the company in a broader perspective that I believe really makes them more invested and, you know, secures the employee base that we have.
Good. I like that.
I definitely echo the dialogue piece. I think in my organization, and certainly this has come from leadership top down, that diversity and inclusion is not just okay to talk about at work, it's important. And it's important for all the things that we know that diversity is good for business and engagement and people feeling connected and seeing themselves in their operations. I do tons of field visits, operational vendor visits, and supply chain operations. I'm so happy to share that you guys should know when AT&T is the one that brings diversity into those rooms. I go into a lot of spaces, both, you know, executive and, you know, just, hey, a warehouse in, you know, small city America that you just never hear of. And I'm so proud that when we're in the room, AT&T is the group that brings the diversity in the room. We talk about that as a team. So dialogue, because we've got to do something about that. Whether it's the vendors that we choose and support, or just going, hey, let's also use that as reflective for our operations. I've been in supply chain logistics operations for 5 or 6 years. It's not uncommon for me to walk into the room and be the only woman in the room. Sometimes, and that's something that I use, you know, sort of my BU experience, my EG experience, working with all the different EGs, and say, hey, let's talk about this. This is important. Like, let's reflect on ourselves. Like, what is the diversity makeup of our organization? Are we lifting up people, not just waiting for people to self-identify? And so I think that through FACES and EG in general, I get more tools to talk about things. Every time I come back, I get so excited and I share all these things that we could do and we can do better, or I share my experiences on the road. And I will say EG, FACES, and others empower me to talk about it, because I don't know 10 years ago if I was willing to say, I'm the only woman in the room, let's talk about this. And now I feel so much more confident to talk about it because I feel like it makes a difference, particularly for those that identify that way in my organization. Yeah. So definitely, like, for me, it's I promote it through dialogue and then saying, how does that operationalize? What are we actually doing about it? And so I think that's where we are in my space.
So add on to that, just specifically about your Filipino heritage. You mentioned something, you mentioned there about being a female, sometimes being the only female in the room. So that's probably been a change over time as well, whether it's us or whether it's a vendor you're working with. But about your heritage, how does that come into play? Whether it's your current job, whether it's in this employee group, or just in general.
I think the values that I grew up in a multicultural household. One is Filipino values. We talk about it a lot: community, hospitality, support. That's, you know, I'm born and raised in that. I know that's very common in many cultures, but I know that's really underlined in the Filipino culture. And certainly that helps me so much, because that's not something I quote unquote had to learn or go, as a leader, I must do that. It's part of my DNA. That's the way I was raised, and that's the way I act around people. The other thing too, and not to kind of downturn this, but just in all honesty, I know that humbleness is a huge thing in Filipino culture. You don't want to stand out all the time. I was kind of raised that way. And so, not to say that that's not okay in the Filipino culture, but I know in the business environment, or when I try to be an effective leader, or, you know, make sure that my boss and other people know what me and my team are doing, that's not necessarily kind of the value that I lead with. And so me understanding, hey, that's deep-rooted in my Filipino culture, but yet sometimes I have to go into a space that I'm uncomfortable with, it's okay. And then in EG FACES, it was great to talk to other people going, oh, it's not just you. Like, that's something that I work on as a leader and as an individual. And then the second piece is, because I grew up in a multicultural household, or I'm around people in the EG or in FACES, or for people that are of Filipino descent or ancestry that join FACES, I know one of the benefits we all talk about is just being more multicultural. And that because we have that, whether it's different perspectives, we respect that more, or expect that more, or we realize that our universal truths aren't universal at all. That's a perspective. And so I think for me, it's the values that I'm raised with, kind of understanding, you know, when that plays into sort of my business role and the work that I do here. And then certainly that multicultural upbringing, whether it's language barriers, or, you know, just, again, the universal truth. That's, I think, how sort of my Filipino culture, you know, kind of manifest it itself in sort of the work I do every day.
Okay. Alyssa, anything you want to add to that from your take?
Yeah, and so for me, my parents came over as very young to America. And so, I grew up with, the mindset of, be very nice to people, right? Like make an impact with them and work hard. Those were kind of the staples within my household. And so that resonates with me today. I always want to be the hardest working person in the room because I want to lead by example. I want to get to know people because the more people I get to speak to, the more I get to talk about diversity and inclusion, and I get to layer in parts of the Filipino culture, right? And I also get to live the culture that my parents brought me up in every single day. But I'll say the one thing that I've had to work on throughout my career is the be humble piece, right? Because when you grow up in a household where it's be humble, you almost mistake that as, be quiet, be reserved, and, don't speak unless spoken to, or don't say anything about yourself because you might look like you're boasting or bragging. But I've learned in my role today, but as I was really growing in my role or growing within the company, I had to be out in front more because I was also one of the only women in the room. I had to be a louder voice, and I had to challenge myself to do that over the years. And frankly, I still work on that today because it's so embedded within my family and in the culture that I grew up in. But I've also learned that you can be vocal and you can be out in front and you can bring people with you, and it's okay. And it's not bragging or boasting. It's actually being proud. And so there were a lot of great things that I learned growing up as a Filipina American, but I've also had to learn to work through some of those great things to overcome them in the workplace so that I could be successful and bring people with me along the way.
Yeah, very good. You guys have sort of similar perspectives there, and your heritage of humility and service. Service comes with that as well. By the way, service and humility are great attributes to have. But you're right. At times you have to, you don't necessarily have to brag on yourself, but you have to. You do have to kind of show others what you're doing, and whether that's yourself, bringing your team along, because sometimes your humility that can extend to your team, and you need to lift up your team just as much, if not more, than yourself at times. So, okay, let's start staying with you. So, influential women. That's the next question. So, has there been someone in your life who's been your biggest influence from a female perspective? Is there somebody? Was it family? Was it somebody else? Was it someone at work? What does that look like for you? And Ellen, same thing for you. So go ahead, Alyssa.
So I would say the most influential person to me has always been my mother. Coming over here, she was 16, married to my father, pregnant with me, and, was working from day one and, hasn't stopped. And she's always been my biggest supporter, but also the most honest person in the room. And for those of you that are Filipino, know that moms and aunties, they will give it to you straight. Like, you will always get the real deal. And sometimes it's a little hard to absorb, but it's always given in love, right? So she has always led by example and has set very high expectations for herself so that she can be an amazing role model. And I feel like if I could be a quarter of the woman she is, I would be great. And so I think about her. My grandmothers also, they were out here in America, and my grandfathers had passed early on, so they raised children on their own. And they were hard-working ladies to the very end. And so I always watched their strength and their ability to be the brightest light in the room and impact people in such a positive way. And so when you see women like that, you want to embody it and you want to follow their lead, and you also want to make them proud, right? And then when I think about the workplace, there are so many female leaders, and I may not have actually been able to build strong relationships with them, but when you are a young woman coming into an organization, anytime you see a woman on a stage or get recognized, you're like, girl power, you're so motivated and inspired by it. So I think about people like Leanne Prevey, Jennifer Van Buskirk, Cint Marshall when she was with us, Christy Swink, regional president, and that's like a big, win for us. But I'll tell you, the women that really motivate me today are the young women that are starting with us and are starting their careers and are developing over time, because I feel like I was them at one time, and I now get the opportunity to impact them and be a role model for them and show them that diversity inclusion is a beautiful thing. It is something that the company believes in and stands for. And regardless of where you come from, your race or your background, you can be an influential and, powerful and impactful woman in leadership within this company anywhere you want to be. And so I think about those young ladies that are coming up in the organization, and they are the ones that inspire me today to be better for them.
It's great.
So I'm going to ditto on my mom. I wrote it down so I can prove to you that it was on there. My team that's on the call, I carry my notebook everywhere, even into EG events. My mom, she gave me my work ethic. That's the biggest one. I can remember from a very young age, I have very vivid memories of like second grade doing math homework and her telling me to do something. I'm like, that's not what the teacher told me to do. And it didn't matter because it was the right thing to do. You needed to do it. Even if nobody was going to check it, even if I wasn't going to get bonus points for it. It was like more about like the essence of why are you doing something and making sure it's the right thing to do. And so when I think about sort of my success, I always think it's like the easy thing of I do what I say I'm going to do because my mom told me to do it years ago. So for her, I will always think the work ethic I have, you do the right thing when no one's looking. I will also share that she's someone that immigrated in her early 20s to the U.S. I'm going to dwell up because this is a big one. When I wanted to move to Dallas, I was like, oh, I can't do it. It's too far away. I'm born and raised in the area. And she goes, I moved to the U.S. in my early 20s with 2 kids without a formal education and didn't know the language. You can go to Dallas. I was like, so for that, again, my boss has to thank my mom for me. Countless women, leadership, even folks that I never even interacted with. So Susan Johnson is the head of our supply chain operations. That is big. I talk to her quite often talk about being the only woman in the room sometimes in some of the forums that she's at. But literally every time you're in a space, it could be a panel, I may not even know this person's business unit. I just see here are leaders on the stage and there are women on it. And for me, that's always kind of to thank them. The other one, and I share this all the time, so some people may know it. So I'm going to say this, and then I'll explain it. So Heather Locklear. And the reason for that is I love what Warner Media is doing about representation in media. As a young girl, there weren't that many female strong women in television. Heather Locklear was a boss on Models Inc. I realize now that that's a terrible role model. But I remember as a young child going, I didn't have a lot of strong women around me or that were in positions. She had an office. She was the lead in that TV show. She was the boss. Everybody listened to her. And I was like, I want to grow up and be a boss. So I think this is like full circle a little bit today. But I think for me, it's representation. So when I hear Warner Media talk about like content and diversification and things like Crazy Rich Asians, like it makes a difference. Like give the women today better role models than Heather Locklear's character in Models Inc. But I think that those are kind of when I think back on like women and going, hey, how can I directly connect that to sort of my career path and how they've influenced me? That those would be the big 3.
That's great.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up today thinking I had to come to this meeting. The term Heather Locklear.
I said, Spaces, we are all honest.
It's all good. It's all good. When you mentioned that advice your mom gave, which was great advice about moving.
Yeah.
Any for both of you, any particular advice that you received that you want to pass on to this group, anything that sticks out for you?
The one thing, and so supply chain, again, Tim Harden was the president of supply chain when I first joined, And he told me something as an intern when he was a president out in California, do good in the job that you're in.
Yep.
And so that's the number one piece of advice I give anybody. Like, it's great to have a career path, it's great to make connections, but if you're not killing it in the role that you're in, whether you know, kind of tell yourself it's a good fit or not, it's hard to share with someone that you're going to be successful in other things that you apply yourself to. And so I always tell people, own it, own your job, own your operations, you know, do well in the role that you're in. First and foremost, I think everything is kind of
great. Alyssa, what's yours?
Yeah. For me, it's be yourself. When you come to work as your authentic self, people get the opportunity to really understand who you are. Now, over time, I think we all evolve in our role, right, as our authentic self, and that's okay. That's actually a great thing because that means we're evolving as individuals as well as teammates or supervisors. And, you know, I echo what Ellen said. A lot of us want to do more in the company, and sometimes we get so ahead of ourselves looking at the prize, we forget we have to be great today because that's table stakes to get us to the next job. And so with that, I say every day you have to find a way or something new to fall in love with your job, right? Because when you love what you do, it's crystal clear, it's undeniable, and it impacts everyone around you, and it makes a difference. So find different ways to love what you do every day, because it's not always a bed of roses, let's be very clear. There are rough days and tough days that come along with our day-to-day jobs, but when you can say, with the body of work that you've created for yourself within this company, I love what I do, it really stands out with people around you, I promise.
Yeah, that's good. You guys aren't asking, but since I'm doing the asking, but I'm gonna answer that too. One of the, always gotten lots of advice, and some of it I remember and some of it I don't, but one of them is in certain situations, how would your boss handle this situation? So, you know, if I was already my boss, how would she or he handle the particular situation I'm in, whether it's solutioning something, whether it's dealing with an issue, dealing with a personnel issue, preparing for a presentation, what is that? So how would my boss handle that? So you're already trying to act like your boss would, even though you're working for her or him. And that really plays out nicely because I tend to be a more detailed person, and then I think, all right, my boss is not going to want this much detail, so how do I kind of lift this up and summarize this in a little bit more simple, more broad way versus maybe what I would expect from my team and want from my team. So there's my, I know you didn't, like I said, I know you didn't ask that. That's a freebie.
Okay.
How do you inspire those around you? So either one of you, what's an inspirational message? How do you influence others? Alyssa, why don't we start back with you?
Yeah, for me, I really just try to live by leading by example. If you want to inspire people, you have to show what right looks like. Now, granted, I'm not perfect, but I think when you really think about your organization or the people that you impact or even partner with, right? If you are being thoughtful and caring, regardless of the conversation, it really does make an impact. And so for me, it's just about being true to yourself and just being a role model and someone that people aspire to be, genuinely aspire to be because of how you lead by example. I think that's always really important.
Good. I can hear Sim Marshall in you right there. The authentic self there. Bring your authentic self to work.
For me, the word is support. You know, you call it servant leadership, you call it caring about the people around you. But I hope that I do that through supporting my team and anybody I'm working with. And sometimes, and support comes in all different ways. Sometimes it's permission, sometimes it's tools and resources, sometimes it's dialogue, or sometimes it's like, I say this often to my team, it's being shoulder to shoulder, that they know that I'm in it with them. And so, and making it a safe place to succeed and to fail. So I think for me, like it all comes down to how am I supporting my team? What's important to them? Do I really care? And I'm with you, Alyssa, that like, it's, oh, my team's on here, it's sincerity, like you really care because people, we're not good actors. You're not fooling anybody when people can totally tell when it's insincere, you have ulterior motives. But I think, if you support the team, I ask my team, how can I support you in this way? Do we have too many chefs in the kitchen? Do you want me to stop asking you for status updates? Do I need to get you something for permission I didn't even realize they were looking for? So kind of my toolkit of empower and inspire, and what I go back to whenever I think I'm not doing that well enough with my team.
Good. Okay, last question for you, and I think we're opening it up for the team here. Looks like we've got 160 or so folks on the bridge listening in. So maybe there's some folks out there that aren't really involved in FACES. Maybe they're not in an employee group, or maybe they are in, but they are wondering if they should get more involved in FACES. So tell the group that's out here, tell the audience why you feel that's important. And I know we sort of started there, but sort of end with, hey, this is how you can make a difference by being involved in this group.
So I think one is there's both what you get out of it, which we've talked about, and what you can contribute. And I think for many of us, it's what we're contributing to FACES that makes EGs and FACES, really important to us, right? I feel better when I get back to the community. I feel better when I'm working and helping the people around me. I think when you think about the importance of the EG, it's certainly people and people's involvement, because for me, FACES is a lot, and the EGs is a lot about, again, I'll go back to the word representation. And so you have to be present to be represented. And so, I think about the people I've met through FACES, Alyssa, or there's a leader that I'm like, oh, she can do it. Maybe I can do it too. It gives me courage and confidence. There was a previous AVP, Eric Bakal, who used to be he retired, but he was in FACES, a founding member. And I was like, gosh, he's an executive director, and there's a Filipino that's an executive director at the company. Then I can start seeing that, in myself. And so I think for EG work, I think people will get different things out of it. But we certainly want people to identify, to be present, to represent, and know that you're contributing to us, you're getting something out of it. And I think you may not even know the impact you have. I mean, just being part of an EG and going, oh, there's hundreds of members. There's a lot of other people that think and feel the same way I do. That in and of itself, almost like power of the numbers, helps. So yeah, for all of those reasons, I think, EG representation, participation, FACES in particular, why it's important.
Good. Alyssa?
Yes, I would say just get involved. Any EG, as Ellen said, FACES is amazing. So make sure you join us as well if you're not a member, just because of, the support and community and giving back. When I first joined, I didn't really know what I was going to get out of it, nor did I know what I was going to give, right? Because you think about our day-to-day jobs, and sometimes we get really busy. But when you make the time to join an EG and get involved, shortly after, you start to realize it becomes a part of your world, and you make the time and you look forward to going to different events, whether it's a 5K or packing, packages for people that are in need, or going to an event for networking where you can meet people that you would not normally meet in your day-to-day, work life. As much as you give, you also see that come back tenfold. And so I feel like, because I've been a part of EGs for many years now, it's really helped me to grow as an individual within the company, within my community, as well as individually, because of all of the different people that I've met, the additional culture that I've learned about my Filipino heritage that, my family did an amazing job teaching me, because growing up, even though I was born here, I learned how to speak Tagalog, because when I was at home, my grandmothers and parents would only speak to me in Tagalog. And at one point I could even read Tagalog. Now it's like, it's a little more difficult, but there are things that I have been given back as a Filipino American by being a part of FACES, as well as being a part of other EGs. You learn about different cultures and backgrounds, and it truly makes you appreciate the people that you work with more, because when you look to the left or the right, we are so diverse now. It's such a beautiful thing that you're actually missing out if you don't get involved. And so try out a couple of ERGs, start with basic, but there is something out there for you that I think that everyone could connect with and really enjoy. And again, I can't enforce how much it really helps you to understand, appreciate the amazing company that we work for that has put a very strong stake in the ground around diversity and inclusion and lives by it every single day.
That's great. That's great. You guys did a fantastic job answering this, but it's almost like you almost knew what they were ahead of. Almost knew what they were ahead of. I'm not going to say you did. You guys did a great job. Well, let's open it up to the group here and see what other questions are out there for you guys. How do we want to handle that?
So what we'll go ahead and do, we'll go ahead and unmute those that we have. And if you have any questions for Alyssa or for Ellen or even for Scott, if you've been so kind, we have to do another session specifically just with you. So
Okay.
we're putting you on the spot.
We're in the bathroom right now.
Gotta say yes to that.
So again, we went ahead and unmuted. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and shout it out.
To me sometimes I feel.
Everybody got all shy all of a sudden.
Filipino.
Yeah, you unmute and all of a sudden it goes quiet.
Or you can cue them. You can cue them to Judy if you guys have any questions.
Otherwise, we're going to give 20 minutes back to everybody else and just pretty much say thank you for your time.
Nobody has a question out there?
Hey, Judy, this is Ramel. You guys hear me?
I don't know.
I know it's been a while. Quick question to the leadership team. I know there's, change is always part of our environment and all that. And how do you guys deal with change and also balancing your time with making sure you're involved with the ERG, but also doing what you need to do for your work? And just any couple of tips that you have to make sure that you're focused on your job, but at the same time working through all that change, because I know that neuro leadership is one of the things that we are currently and always working through.
Yeah,
so for me, oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, let's go ahead. I was going to say the question, kind of a two-pronged question about change, and then how do you balance kind of employee group activities in your job, really in your life is probably a better question. So, yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah, I was going to say, being an employee with AT&T for almost 18 years now, I would say one of the key things I've learned is how to be nimble and quick, right? Because in our company, things are changing all the time. And so I think those that have the ability to be flexible and nimble and are excited for change, even if you're a little hesitant, if we can bring you along and you kind of love it once you get there, it's all good. But I think you have to be flexible. And I think when you're a part of an EG and you're actively involved, being great at your day job still remains as priority one. And in our organizations today, because diversity and inclusion is so encouraged, there's a little bit of flexibility in there. And I think when you take a look at when events happen where you can get involved, they're usually before or after work hours, so it shouldn't usually conflict, so there could be a really great balance of both. But time management will definitely play a part in that.
Yeah.
I think for me, when change is coming, I want to make sure that I'm part of it and that it's just not happening to me. And so I really want to understand and embrace the change. And so I ask tons of questions about why. And it's the same thing whether my boss gives me a directive or it comes from the larger corporation or, it's from my team and they're asking me to sponsor and support change. Like, I've got to authentically own it. Like, it's not leaving my lips until I have really believed in this thing. And and sometimes it takes a lot of understanding and open-mindedness and working with people. But I find that once I get to a place where I really understand and champion and believe that this is the right thing to do, because if I don't, then I'm going back to that person or that group. But when I do, it becomes really easy to be a leader of that change because you see all the benefits. and sometimes you just want to get there faster. So for me, change always starts with understanding it, embracing it, owning it. Like, this is not because so-and-so told me to do it. This is, somebody asked me and recommended, but this is an Ellen item now. Now this is a you item. And so being part of the change, not just letting it happen to you passive aggressively sometimes. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves. And you have to be around people that you can go back to and challenge change, or recognize, well, we might have different perspectives on that, but maybe you've built a little bit of trust to embrace it more. For me, time balance, same things that Alyssa said, except that or in addition to that, as a logistics person that's just organized and all that, I schedule my time like crazy. And so for me, time balance, time management, because I have intentional schedules where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this ERG work in this time, and I'm going to intentionally schedule that into my work week, into my day, into my personal life. And sometimes that's a lot, and sometimes that's a little, but I'm very transparent with the people around me. So we actually, in the DFW area, we're trying to put something together kind of for trick-or-treating and the Halloween events, and I've shared with folks, like, honestly, what my time commitments can be. And I think once you start there, it's a little bit easier to sort of negotiate that time balance, and people are very respectful of that. It took me a long time before I was okay going, oh, if I say no, they're never going to ask, or they're going to think I don't think it's important. But I think everybody just realizes that we're all struggling with that, and sometimes you're going to give a lot, and sometimes you're going to give a little. And everybody, like, and some people are like, I'm so glad that you balance it, because a lot of groups and things and EG work I've done before, I burnt out and then stopped doing anything. Yeah. And so that's like the not, like, that's the last thing you want. So yeah, schedule it and sort of be transparent about that and share that with the people around you. I think people will find that people are more accepting and encouraging of that than you would think they are.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just add one or two little tidbits. AT&T at times stands for at this time.
I just learned that.
At this time, I have a new job. At this time, I have a new boss. At this time, we're going to put in a new process. At this time, we're going to retrench and do something a little bit different. This time, we're going to have this new strategy. I'd argue that probably most companies, especially companies our size, are going to go about it the same way. Change is just part of life. It's just as big as your, not just at work, but the other parts of your life too. Spouses, family, kids, parents, health. You just go on and on. Finances. Things change, and at some point you have to embrace it. And you do asking why is the right thing, so you understand why. And then that doesn't mean you're always going to fully agree, but at some point it's either going to happen to you, or to your point, or you need to be a part of it. And I'd rather be I'm going to be a part of it. And I think people will be more successful, they'll perform better, and they'll be awarded more and recognized more when they embrace that change versus when they kind of put the hand up. As far as balance, that's really difficult. I love what you both had to say. There's going to be times during I'll call it the work time, where you can do employee group work. You know your schedule's better than anybody, so you have to figure that out. At the same time, especially if you're in a leadership role in an employee group, I think of that like getting extended education. If I was going back and getting another master's degree or bachelor's degree, whatever I was doing, I certainly wouldn't be doing it between, in my case, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. I'd be doing it on the weekends, or I'd be doing it on the evenings, or maybe I could grab some time, around lunch. That's what you have to do. It's above and beyond. It's and you have to be okay with that. You have to work that in, and you have to feel comfortable that that's the time you're going to spend, or you may not should be doing it. So that's the way I think about balance, especially with employee group activities and specifically leadership activities.
I think employee groups, you're an employee first. You can't be in an employee group if you're not an employee.
Group second, employee first.
Are there any other questions out there? Because I do have one from the gallery, and I'm going to try to go ahead and paraphrase this as much as I can. This person said that it's great to see AVP levels such as Ellen and Alyssa. However, they wanted to see if there was possibly a report or anything like that showed any other Filipino Americans at AT&T. And I think that's probably going to be a question for diversity and inclusion. They may have some sort of census, or perhaps even, I guess, a report for that, unless somebody on the panel here knows that answer off the top of your head. But the second question, or more of the that I wanted to emphasize, is that he was asking, what can we do to, I guess, encourage or open up a pipeline from managers and director levels to use EG as spaces? I'm not quite sure what that means. Do you?
Hey, Judy, it's Roman. Judy, it's Roman. I asked that question.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, well, I just want to say thanks to the Magandas, Eileen and Alyssa, for doing this. I really appreciate your time in doing this. So,
Roman, you're going to have to translate what Maganda means first.
Oh, Maganda is, it means beautiful ladies. Beautiful ladies. So I've met Alyssa in person before, and that's the truth. So, ladies, my question is, how can we use? So let me start from the beginning. So the first question is, it's great to see Filipino representation at an AVP level. We don't see too much representation. I'm only aware of you and Eileen. Do you know of any other Filipinos or Filipino at that level that you're aware of?
For me, I'm not aware of anyone else aside from the two of us at our level or above.
Okay.
But there could be. Our organization is so large, but I haven't, met anyone else.
Okay, thanks. And that's going to lead to my next question, where, one thing I like to see is how can we use or take advantage of being a FACES member and have that be kind of like a pipeline or get us exposed to those manager, director levels? Because a lot of us, I see a lot of level 1 and 2. I would love to see more Filipinos at your level so that we can have representation and be part of that, just to empower us, right? So, that's for both you ladies. What do you, how can we use our, our participation in FACES and kind of get the experience to get to those levels that you two ladies are at?
I think maybe the answer to that is, how do we use FACES as a support and empowerment and skill growth vehicle, right? So I think, the answer for every individual about, what is needed, what's the career path, certainly not an expert, but I think myself and Alyssa obviously are willing to lend our time, and I'm sure there's lots of other people in this organization that are willing to lend time for whatever we think, is helpful, whether that's mentorship, whether that's like a specific question about resumes, like during the EG conference, I participate in the resume reading workshop, interview skills. Maybe we do things like, hey, let's everybody do spotlight on different departments so you know even what the opportunities are out there. Would be great to hear about people, maybe FACES do things like, hey, those that were recently promoted and people to share their stories. So I think FACES as a vehicle for that empowerment, education, skill growth, mentorship, that's what that would be my answer, is I think FACES and the people involved are more than willing to help each other, and I know certainly I am. I want to volunteer, Alyssa. I think I just did.
Yeah, no. Volunteer me all day long. I actually agree with all of that. And the other thing I would say is, because of our background, or overall cultural background of being humble, I think the first step is, if you're out there and you're interested, you got to raise your hand and put it out there first. And once we know you're interested, we can create different avenues to help. If it's mentorship, maybe we can help you create the dialogue with your supervisor, right? So that they can help you progress to that next level. But I think the first part of it is really just individually, if that's something that you are interested in, you have to raise your hand. And I think using our local chapters, or Ellen and myself, is a great way to get the dialogue going so that we can help you create that dialogue and action with your supervisor. And then we can help you along the way as well.
Aw.
Yeah, I was also going to say that from a roster perspective, you all, the leadership here, you all know who's in the FACES group. You can always bash that against. You can ask Rick Wilson, for example, in diversity and inclusion, to bash that against the employee database and come back with the titles, so you know everybody that what the titles are. I don't think, and Colleen can edit me on this if I'm wrong, I don't think Filipino American is a EEO classification. So we can't go to Rick and say, hey, give us, tell us everybody who's Filipino in the company, because I don't even think there's a self-identification of that. That's why being a part of this employee group and bashing against, our database with titles, I think that's the closest you're going to get. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, everybody, I just wanted to say we're 5 minutes to the hour, but at the same rate, I wanted to take this opportunity again. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Alyssa and Ellen, for taking the time out. I know you guys all have busy schedules, and in the same breath of like what Ellen was saying, we're doing this on our lunch break, so we got to go.
That's good, because I got to go to the bathroom.
We really hope that you enjoyed this unique type of fireside chat where we actually had the chief executive officer actually do the interview for our boss ladies, if you will, for Faces. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance, and we're going to go ahead and post this onto our SharePoint as soon as it's available. And then if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to go ahead and email us at Faces AT&T. All right?
Just one other thing, Ellen or Alyssa or Scott, do you guys have anything you'd like to impart to this wonderful group that met with us today?
Mabuhay.
Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is very humbling and kind, and I appreciate that 146 people cared enough to come in and listen. So, and hopefully the dialogue doesn't stop here, but thank you. This is very nice. Had a fun.
Really nice job. An innovative way to do this where you're doing it all virtually. You're saving the company money by not having it formal.
You're more than welcome to come to Southern California, Scott.
Yeah, I'll be out there at some point. And Alyssa, Ellen, just really nice job. Thank you for what you do and your leadership, and thank you for your really well done comments today. I think I learned from them, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. So just a really nice job, and thanks to the Faces leadership team for having all of this and putting this on. So well done.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
You have to stop the recording for a second.